Welcome back to the channel, a place where faith meets real life, where hearts searching for hope find strength, and where every message is meant to remind you that your life has purpose, meaning, and direction. This channel is dedicated to sharing powerful Christian faith messages that inspire you to grow spiritually, protect your peace, and walk confidently in the calling placed over your life. Placed over your life. If you believe that faith can transform the way we think, the way we live, and the way we live, and the way we face life's battles, then you're in the right place. Today's message is deeply personal and incredibly powerful because it speaks to something many people struggle with but rarely talk about. Sometimes the greatest battles we fight are not the ones happening around us, but the ones happening within us. But the ones happening within us, the words people speak, the labels they place on us, the expectations they push onto our lives, these things can slowly shape how we see ourselves if we are not careful. But there comes a moment in life when a person realizes that not everything handed to them should be accepted. Maybe you had moments when someone's words made you doubt yourself. Maybe you've carried criticism longer than you should have. Maybe you have carried criticism longer than you should have. Maybe you've allowed fear, negativity, or disappointment to sit in your heart for far too long. If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. Many people walk through life carrying burdens that were never meant for them. But today, we're going to talk about something life-changing, the power of learning what you should never accept from anyone. Because faith is not only about believing in God's promises, it's also about protecting the identity and purpose that God placed inside you. So wherever you are right now, whether you are driving, sitting quietly, or just taking a moment to breathe, open your heart to this message. Let these words encourage you, strengthen you, and remind you that your life is too valuable to be shaped by the wrong voices. Let's begin. There comes a moment in life when a person wakes up and realizes that not everything given to them should be accepted. Not every word spoken over you belongs in your heart. Not every label placed on your life deserves to stay. And not every situation that people try to normalize should become your reality. Sometimes the most powerful thing a believer can learn is the courage to say, no, I'm not taking that. Because faith is not only about what you receive from heaven, it's also about what you refuse to accept from people. A lot of folks think humility means accepting everything quietly. They think being kind means letting people walk all over your purpose. But there is a difference between humility and surrendering your identity. It's shaping you. There is a difference between patience and allowing your spirit to be crushed. A person who understands their worth in the eyes of God knows that there are certain things they simply cannot allow into their life. Not because they are arrogant, not because they think they are better than anyone else, but because they know they were created with purpose, with value, with divine intention. And if you're being real with yourself, you've probably had moments when someone tried to hand you something that didn't belong to you. Maybe it was criticism that tore down your confidence. Maybe it was criticism that tore down your confidence. Maybe it was a label that made you feel small. Maybe it was negativity that drained the life out of your dreams. And deep down, your spirit felt uncomfortable, like something inside you was saying, nah, this ain't it. That inner voice matters. That quiet conviction in your heart is often the Spirit reminding you who you are. One of the first things you should never accept from anyone is the idea that you are less than what God created you to be. The world has a way of shrinking people. Society loves to put people into boxes to measure worth by status, money, popularity, or appearance. People will look at where you came from and try to determine where you should end up. They see your past mistakes and act like your future is already decided. But listen, your past does not have the authority to define your destiny. You may have made some bad choices. You may have had seasons where you felt lost, confused, or even broken. But the truth is, God never designed your life to be trapped in yesterday's failures. Every new morning is proof that grace is still working in your story. Every breath you take is another opportunity to step closer to the purpose written over your life. So when someone tries to tell you that you're not enough, that you'll never rise above your circumstances, that you should just settle for less. You've got to have the strength to reject that. You can't carry someone else's limited vision for your life. That's not your burden to hold. Another thing you should never accept from anyone is constant disrespect. Now let's keep it real for a moment. Kindness doesn't mean becoming a doormat. Kindness doesn't mean becoming a doormat. Love doesn't mean tolerating behavior that destroys your peace. God calls His people to walk in humility, but He never asked you to accept abuse, manipulation, or dishonor as normal. Some people will smile in your face, but secretly tear down your spirit. They'll talk slick, throw subtle insults, and try to make it seem like you're overreacting when you feel hurt. They'll say things like, "I'm just being honest," when in reality they're just being cruel. And after a while, if you're not careful, you start believing those words. But yeah, you're not careful. You start believing those words. But you have to remember something powerful. People often speak from their own brokenness. A person who constantly disrespects others usually carries insecurity within themselves. A person who constantly disrespects others usually carries insecurity within themselves. They project their pain outward because they don't know how to deal with it inwardly. That doesn't mean you hate them. It doesn't mean you attack them back. But it does mean you set boundaries, because protecting your peace is not selfish. It's wise. You can love someone and still refuse to accept how they treat you. You can forgive someone and still decide you're not going to allow their behavior to shape your environment anymore. And sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is quietly step back and say, "I care about you, but I'm not accepting this energy in my life anymore." Another thing you should never accept is fear being placed over your dreams. Fear is one of the enemy's favorite tools. It creeps into your thoughts and whispers lies that sound logical, but are actually designed to stop you from moving forward. You'll hear voices saying, "Don't try that. You'll fail. Don't step out. You're not ready. Don't believe that dream is possible." And here's the crazy part. Sometimes those voices come from people who genuinely think they're helping you. They'll say they're trying to protect you. They'll say they're just being realistic. They'll say they don't want you to get hurt. But if every voice around you only speaks limitation, then something is off. Faith has never been about playing it safe all the time. Faith is about trusting God enough to move even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. It's about stepping forward when your heart is pounding and your mind is full of questions. Because sometimes the path God calls you to walk will look crazy to people. Because sometimes the path God calls you to walk will look crazy to people who only see with natural eyes. They might say, "Why would you start that? Why would you believe that? Why would you leave what's comfortable?" But the truth is, purpose rarely grows in comfort zones. You were not designed to spend your life hiding from possibilities. The same God who placed that vision in your heart also placed the strength inside you to pursue it. So when fear shows up dressed as advice, you've got to recognize it. You've got to say, "I hear what you're saying, but I'm not accepting fear as my guide." Another thing you should never accept is the pressure to compromise your values. This world has a way of making compromise your values. This world has a way of making compromise look cool. People will tell you that integrity is outdated. They'll say things like, "Everybody does it," or "It's not that serious." They'll encourage shortcuts. They'll push you toward decisions that feel wrong in your spirit. And sometimes the pressure is subtle. It's not always loud rebellion. Sometimes it's just small compromises stacked one on top of another. Maybe it's laughing at things you know are wrong. Maybe it's participating in conversations that tear others down. Maybe it's chasing success in ways that leave your conscience uneasy. But deep inside, there's a quiet conviction reminding you who you are. The world might say, "Just go with the flow." But faith says, stay rooted. Because when you start compromising your values just to fit in, you slowly disconnect from the person God created you to be. Integrity might not always be the easiest road. Sometimes it costs you opportunities. Sometimes it means walking away from situations that could benefit you in the short term. But integrity protects something far more valuable than temporary success. It protects your soul. And the last thing you should never accept from anyone is the belief that your life has no purpose. There are people walking around. There are people walking around today feeling invisible. They wake up every morning going through routines that feel empty. They scroll through social media, seeing everyone else's highlight reels, and start thinking their own life doesn't matter. Maybe you felt that before. Maybe you've had days where you wondered if your existence really makes a difference. Maybe you've had nights where you stared at the ceiling, asking yourself what your life is actually about. The feeling, asking yourself what your life is actually about. And if we're being honest, those feelings can hit hard. But purpose is not determined by how many people know your name. And purpose is not measured by how viral you go or how much applause you receive. Sometimes purpose looks like quietly loving people when they need it most. Sometimes it looks like encouraging someone who's on the edge of giving up. Sometimes it looks like staying faithful in small responsibilities that nobody else notices. Heaven measures impact differently than the world does. The world celebrates visibility, but God often works through faithfulness. There are moments when you may feel overlooked, but that does not mean you are unimportant. Every act of kindness, every prayer whispered in faith, every time you choose love over bitterness, it all matters. And the crazy thing is, you might never fully see how much your life has touched others. Someone might be standing stronger today because of something you said months ago. Today, because of something you said months ago. Someone might still be holding on because of a moment when you showed them compassion. Your life carries influence whether you realize it or not. So when someone tries to convince you that your life has no meaning, that your voice doesn't matter, that your presence doesn't change anything, you've got to reject that lie. Because the truth is, God does not create that lie. Because the truth is, God does not create accidents. He does not make people without purpose. He does not place souls on this earth just to exist without meaning. And even in seasons when you feel lost, when your path feels unclear, when your heart feels tired, the story of your life is still being written. There is still more ahead of you. More growth, more healing, more purpose waiting to unfold. And sometimes the biggest breakthrough begins the moment you decide that certain things people try to hand you, you're simply not accepting anymore. Because the truth is, when you begin to refuse the wrong things, you finally create space in your life for the right things. A lot of people pray for peace, but keep accepting chaos. They ask God for direction, but keep listening to voices that lead them in circles. They ask for healing, but keep holding on to relationships that reopen the same wounds. They ask for healing, but keep holding on to relationships that reopen the same wounds. And if we're being honest, sometimes the biggest shift in life doesn't come from receiving something new. It comes from letting go of what never belonged in the first place. You have to understand that your spirit is like a house. Whatever you allow through the door will eventually influence the atmosphere inside. If you constantly allow negativity, criticism, jealousy, and toxic energy to enter, the environment of your heart will start to feel heavy. You'll wake up feeling drained without even knowing why. Your joy will feel distant, your confidence will start fading, and suddenly life feels harder than it actually is. But when you guard your heart wisely, something powerful happens. The atmosphere changes. Peace begins to settle in places that once felt restless. Your thoughts become clearer. Your faith grows stronger. You begin to walk with a quiet confidence that doesn't come from pride, but from understanding who you are and whose you are. Another thing you should never accept from anyone is the pressure to become someone you are not. This world loves imitation. It celebrates trends, personalities, and lifestyles that everyone tries to copy. SOC is shaping you. Media especially can make it seem like you need to look a certain way, talk a certain way, live a certain way just to matter. But here's the real talk. Comparison is one of the fastest ways to lose sight of your purpose. When you spend too much time looking at someone else's path, you start questioning your own. You begin thinking you're behind. You begin thinking you're behind. You start believing your journey is somehow less important. And before you know it, you're trying to reshape your life to match someone else's story, but God didn't design you to be a copy. He designed you to be original. Your personality, your experiences, your struggles, your victories. Your struggles, your victories, all of it is part of a unique story that no one else can replicate. The world may try to convince you that being authentic isn't enough, but heaven celebrates authenticity. There is power in being comfortable in your own skin. Some people might not understand you. Some people might not vibe with your energy. Some might even criticize the way you live out your faith, but that's okay. Not everyone is meant to walk your road. And honestly, trying to please everyone is exhausting. You'll spend your whole life adjusting yourself just to fit into spaces where you were never meant to belong. So when someone tries to pressure you into abandoning your true self, just to gain acceptance, you've got to be strong enough to say, nah, that's not who I am. Because the moment you start living authentically, you begin attracting the people and opportunities that align with who God created you to be. Another thing you should never accept is bitterness growing inside your heart. Now this one is real, because life will absolutely give you reasons to be bitter. People will betray you. Friends might disappoint you. Someone you trusted might walk away when you needed them most. And those moments hurt deeply. Pain has a way of settling into the heart if it's not dealt with properly. At first it's just sadness, but over time it can turn into resentment. You start replaying what happened again and again in your mind. You imagine what you should have said. You hold on to anger like it's the only thing keeping you strong. But bitterness is a heavy weight to carry. It doesn't just stay aimed at the person who hurt you. It slowly poisons your own peace. It steals joy from your present because your mind is constantly stuck in the past. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It doesn't mean allowing someone to keep hurting you. Forgiveness simply means refusing to let the pain control your heart anymore. And that takes strength, real strength, because choosing forgiveness when you've been deeply hurt is not easy. Sometimes you have to pray through tears. Sometimes you have to release things little by little instead of all at once. But when you refuse to let bitterness live inside you, something beautiful happens. Your heart becomes lighter. Your spirit becomes freer. The peace that God promises begins to flow through your life again. Another thing you should never accept from anyone is the idea that your struggles make you weak. Everybody goes through battles. Every single person walking this earth has faced moments where life knocked them down. Some people hide their struggles better than others, but the reality is we all carry stories of hardship. The difference is how we interpret those moments. Some people look at their struggles and see shame. They think their broken moments disqualify them from living a meaningful life. They think their scars are proof that they are flawed beyond repair. But faith teaches something completely different. Your struggles are not proof of weakness. They are evidence that you survived something that could have destroyed you. The nights you cried and still got up the pit. Next morning, the moments you wanted to quit but kept moving forward anyway. The times you felt lost but continued praying, even when answers didn't come immediately. All of that shows resilience that many people never see. God often builds strength through seasons of difficulty, not because He enjoys watching people struggle, but because those moments shape character in ways comfort never could. When you come through hard seasons, you begin to understand compassion more deeply. You become more patient with others. With others, your faith becomes less theoretical and more personal. And the crazy part is, the very things you once felt ashamed about may eventually become the testimony that helps someone else keep going. Another thing you should never accept is the belief that you have to carry everything alone. A lot of people walk through life pretending they're okay, even when they're falling apart inside. They smile in public, laugh in conversations, and act strong because they feel like they have to hold everything together. But the truth is, humans were never meant to live life in isolation. God created community for a reason. He designed people to support each other, to encourage each other, to pray for each other, When you isolate yourself too much, the burdens you carry begin to feel heavier than they actually are. Sometimes pride makes people stay silent. Sometimes pride makes people stay silent. Sometimes fear of being judged keeps people from opening up. Sometimes past disappointments make people hesitant to trust again. Make people hesitant to trust again. But healing often begins the moment you allow yourself to be honest about what you're going through. That doesn't mean sharing your life with everyone. That doesn't mean sharing your life with everyone. Not everyone deserves access to your deepest struggles, but there are people God places in your path who genuinely care about your well-being. People who will pray for you when your faith feels weak. People who will remind you of truth when your thoughts become cloudy. People who will walk beside you instead of abandoning you. When things get messy, those relationships are gifts. And learning to accept support doesn't make you weak. It actually takes courage to say, I'm going through something right now, and I could use some help. Another thing you should never accept is living a life controlled by regret. Regret is a tricky thing because it disguises itself as reflection. At first, it seems like you're just thinking about the past, learning from mistakes, trying to understand what went wrong. But if you're not careful, regret can slowly trap you in a mental prison. You start wishing you could go back and change things. You replay old decisions again and again in your mind. You imagine how life might look if you had chosen differently. And while reflection can be healthy, living in regret steals the joy from the present moment. The past cannot be rewritten. No amount of worrying, overthinking, or guilt can travel back in time and undo what has already happened. But grace has the power to transform what comes next. God specializes in taking broken pieces and building something beautiful out of them. Many of the greatest transformations happen after people make mistakes they thought would define them forever. The truth is, your life is not ruined because of a bad chapter. A chapter is not the whole book. You are still breathing. You are still learning. You still have time to grow, to change, to build something meaningful. And every day you choose to move forward instead of staying stuck in regret is a step toward freedom. Another thing you should never accept is the idea that your prayers don't matter. There are seasons when prayer feels powerful and immediate. You speak to God and you feel peace right away. You sense direction. You feel comfort. But then there are seasons when prayer feels quiet. You speak, but the answers seem delayed. You ask questions, but clarity doesn't come instantly. And during those times, doubt can start whispering in your mind. You might think your prayers aren't being heard. You might feel like giving up on talking to God altogether. But faith means trusting, even when you don't see immediate results. Prayer is not just about getting answers quickly. Prayer is about relationship. It's about bringing your heart honestly before God, even when you're confused or hurting. Sometimes the greatest transformations happen slowly, in ways we don't immediately recognize. A prayer whispered in weakness can still move heaven. A simple "Lord, help me," spoken in the middle of a difficult moment, carries more power than you realize. And even when silence seems to surround you, God is still working behind the scenes in ways your human eyes cannot yet see. So never accept the lie that your prayers are pointless. Never accept the lie that your prayers are pointless. They are seeds being planted in spiritual ground that will eventually produce fruit in ways you cannot predict yet. And as you continue walking this journey of faith, learning to reject the wrong things and embrace the right ones, you start noticing something incredible happening within you. Your mindset begins to shift, your heart becomes stronger, your perspective changes. Situations that once intimidated you no longer carry the same power. Words that once wounded you deeply start losing their grip. The approval you once chased from people becomes less important because you start realizing that the only validation that truly matters comes from God. And when that realization settles deep inside your soul, you begin walking through life with a different type of confidence. Not loud arrogance, not prideful self-importance, but a quiet, steady assurance that no matter what life throws at you, you know who you are. You know what you stand for. And you know there are certain things in this world you simply refuse to accept anymore. And when you reach that place in your life, something inside you starts to stabilize. Something inside you starts to stabilize. Your heart becomes less shaken by every opinion, every criticism, every trend that tries to pull you in different directions. You begin to realize that life becomes clear when you stop accepting everything people try to hand you. Because the truth is, not every voice deserves authority in your life. There are voices that will try to speak doubt over your future. There are voices that will try to question your faith. There are voices that will try to remind you of who you used to be, instead of recognizing who you are becoming. And if you're not careful, you might allow those voices to echo in your mind longer than they should. But wisdom teaches you something powerful. Just because someone says something does not mean you have to receive it. People speak from many places, sometimes from love, sometimes from fear, sometimes from wounds they haven't healed from yet. And when you begin to understand that, you stop taking every word personally. You learn to filter what you hear. You begin asking yourself, does this align with the truth God has placed in my heart? If it does, you hold on to it. If it doesn't, you let it fall to the ground and keep moving forward. And that kind of spiritual maturity changes the way you walk through life. You stop getting pulled into unnecessary arguments. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who already decided how they want to see you. You stop draining your energy trying to change the minds of individuals who are committed to misunderstanding you. Sometimes the most peaceful response is silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from fear, but the kind that comes from fountains, that comes from confidence. The kind that says, I know who I am and I don't need to fight every battle thrown my way. And that's another thing you should never accept, being pulled into battles that have nothing to do with your purpose. Some people live for drama. They thrive on conflict, gossip, and tea, and cyan. They stir up conversations just to see reactions. They throw comments into the air, hoping someone will bite so the situation can explode into chaos. But you don't have to participate in that. Just because someone invites you into an argument doesn't mean you have to accept the invitation. You've got bigger things to focus on. You've got growth to pursue, peace to protect, faith to strengthen. Spending your energy on pointless conflict only distracts you from the path God is guiding you along. And let's keep it real for a moment. Peace is expensive. Not expensive in money, but expensive in discipline. It requires you to walk away from conversations that once entertained you. It requires you to stop reacting to things that once triggered you. It requires you to control your emotions when every part of you wants to respond instantly. It requires you to control your emotions when every part of you wants to respond instantly. But protecting your peace is worth that discipline, because when your heart is calm, you hear God more clearly. But when your heart is calm, you hear God more clearly. When your spirit is quiet, your decisions become wiser. When your mind is not constantly overwhelmed with negativity, creativity, and vision begin to grow again. Another thing you should never accept is allowing disappointment to kill your faith. Life has a way of surprising people, and not always in good ways. Sometimes things don't work out the way you hoped. Sometimes the door you prayed for stays closed. Sometimes the opportunity you believed in disappears right in front of you. Those moments can shake your confidence. Those high in front of you. Those moments can shake your confidence. They can make you question everything. You might start wondering if you misunderstood God's direction, or if you believed too strongly in something that wasn't meant to happen. But disappointment does not mean your story is over. Sometimes closed doors are actually protection. Sometimes delays are preparation. Sometimes what looks like a loss today is clearing the path for something greater tomorrow. Faith isn't about always understanding what's happening. Faith is about trusting that God sees the full picture, even when you only see a small part of it. And when you refuse to accept a disappointment as the final chapter of your life, you keep moving forward. You stay open to new possibilities. You keep praying. You keep believing. Another thing you should never accept is allowing guilt to define your identity. There are people walking around today carrying guilt from things that happened years ago. Mistakes they made, words they wish they could take back, choices they regret deeply. And the weight of that guilt follows them everywhere. It whispers in their mind when they try to move forward. It whispers in their mind when they try to move forward. Reminds them of their worst moments when they try to grow into better versions of themselves. But guilt was never meant to be a permanent residence in your heart. Yes, conviction can guide us toward change. Recognizing a mistake can help us grow. But once you have learned from something, once you have turned away from it, once you have asked for forgiveness and committed to doing better, you cannot keep punishing yourself forever. Grace exists for a reason. Grace exists for a reason. And grace means that your identity is not locked into your worst decision. It means that God sees the person you are becoming, not just the person you used to be. When you accept that truth, you begin to walk with a different type of freedom. You stop introducing yourself mentally by your failures. Stop introducing yourself mentally by your failures. You stop assuming people are judging you the way you judge yourself. Instead, you begin stepping into the future with humility and hope. Another thing you should never accept is living your life constantly seeking approval from everyone around you. That habit will drain the life out of your purpose faster than almost anything else. When your decisions are based entirely on what people think, you start losing your cert. What people think, you start losing your direction. You start adjusting your values depending on who you're around. You start saying yes when your spirit is telling you no. And before long, you wake up feeling like you're living someone else's life instead of your own. The truth is, people's opinions change constantly. Someone who praises you today might criticize you tomorrow. Someone who supports you now might disagree with you later. If your identity is tied to public approval, your emotional stability will rise and fall with every opinion that comes your way. But when your identity is rooted in faith, something shifts. You begin caring more about pleasing God than impressing people. You start making decisions based on conviction rather than popularity. And while that path might not always earn applause from everyone around you, it brings something far more valuable: peace within your own soul. Another thing you should never accept is believing that your life is too ordinary to make a difference. Sometimes people look at their routine and feel like nothing about it is significant. They wake up, go to work, handle responsibilities, take care of family, deal with daily challenges, and repeat the cycle again the next day. It can feel like life is just a series of ordinary moments stacked on top of each other. But what many people fail to realize is that extraordinary impact often grows out of ordinary faithfulness, showing kindness when no one expects it, encouraging someone who feels invisible. Choosing honesty would be easier, staying patient in situations that test your character. These moments may seem small, but they carry tremendous influence. A single act of compassion can change someone's entire day. A word of encouragement can restore hope to someone who was on the edge of giving up. The ripple effects of your actions often travel farther than you ever realize. And God sees every one of those moments. He sees the sacrifices people overlook. He sees the quiet prayers whispered when nobody else is around. He sees the quiet prayers whispered when nobody else is around. He sees the effort you put into loving others, even when you're tired. Nothing done with sincerity and faith is wasted. Another thing you should never accept is the idea that growth should always be comfortable. The idea that growth should always be comfortable. A lot of people want transformation without the process that produces it. They want stronger faith without facing situations that challenge their trust. They want wisdom without experiencing circumstances that force them to think deeper. But growth almost always involves stretching beyond what feels familiar. Sometimes it means stepping into environments where you feel inexperienced. Sometimes it means taking responsibility that seems overwhelming at first. Sometimes it means taking responsibility that seems immense, letting go of habits that once felt normal. Those transitions can feel uncomfortable, even scarier. But discomfort often signals that you are evolving. Just like muscles grow stronger through resistance, character grows stronger through resistance. Character grows stronger through challenges. And when you refuse to accept stagnation as your lifestyle, you begin embracing the process of growth, even when it feels tough. Another thing you should never accept is the belief that kindness makes you weak. In a world that often celebrates aggression and dominance, kindness can sometimes look like vulnerability. People might assume that if you're gentle, compassionate, or patient, you must be easy to take advantage of. But kindness, rooted in faith, is actually one of the strongest qualities a person can have. It takes strength to respond with grace when someone treats you unfairly. It takes maturity to control your anger when you could easily lash out. It takes courage to keep loving people in a world that sometimes feels cold. Kindness is not weakness, it is controlled strength. It shows that, your character is not determined by how others treat you, but by the principles you choose to live by. And when kindness flows from genuine faith, it carries a quiet power that can soften even the hardest hearts. So never accept the lie that being compassionate makes you less powerful. True strength often shows itself through gentleness. True strength often shows itself through gentleness. And as you continue walking through life with these convictions, rejecting the things that poison your spirit and embracing the things that nurture your soul, something inside you keeps growing stronger. Your perspective becomes clearer. Your faith becomes steadier. Your heart becomes more resilient. And slowly, day by day, decision by decision, you begin shaping a life that reflects the truth you have chosen to believe. A life where certain things no longer have permission to live inside your mind, inside your spirit, or inside the path you are walking forward. And as you continue walking forward with that kind of clarity, you begin to notice something powerful happening inside you. The things that once shook you easily no longer have the same control over your emotions. The opinions that once kept you up at night start losing their grip on your mind. You begin to stand a little taller, not because life suddenly became easy, but because your spirit has learned what it will no longer accept. This kind of growth doesn't happen overnight. It develops through moments, real moments when you're tested, moments when someone disrespects you, and you must decide whether to carry that pain or release it. Moments when someone questions your worth, and you must choose whether to believe them or remember what God says about you. Those moments shape the direction of your life more than you realize. A lot of people underestimate the power of what they allow into their mind. But your mind is like soil. Whatever seeds fall into it will eventually grow. What if someone plants doubt and you keep watering it with fear? That doubt will turn into insecurity. If someone plants negativity and you keep replaying it in your thoughts, it will grow into discouragement. But if you learn to reject the wrong seeds, your mind stays healthier. You begin planting truth instead. You start reminding yourself of the promises you believe in. You start focusing on the goodness that still exists around you. And over time, your mindset becomes stronger than the negativity people try to place around you. And over time, your mindset becomes stronger than the negativity people try to place around you. Another thing you should never accept is the feeling that you have fallen too far to rise again. Life has a way of humbling people. Sometimes mistakes pile up. Sometimes failures happen back to back. Sometimes circumstances hit you so hard that you begin to wonder if recovery is even possible. There are people walking around today who quietly believe they've already missed their chance. There are people walking around today who quietly believe they've already missed their chance. They think their best years are gone. They think the doors they needed have already closed forever. But the truth is, as long as you are breathing, your story is still unfolding. Faith teaches that restoration is always possible. Faith teaches that restoration is always possible. It teaches that broken situations can be rebuilt. It teaches that people can grow beyond the worst seasons of their lives. You might look at your past and see chaos. You might see moments that make you cringe when you remember them. But God has never been limited by human failure. He works in ways people don't expect. He rebuilds things others thought were permanently destroyed. He brings purpose out of places that once felt like complete loss. So never accept the idea that your life is permanently ruined because of a bad chapter. One chapter does not determine the ending of the whole book. Another thing you should never accept is allowing someone else's bitterness to become your burden. Sometimes people carry deep pain inside. And instead of healing from it, they spread it. They criticize everything. They expect the worst from everyone. They assume negative motives behind every action. And if you're not careful, being around that energy too much can affect your own outlook on life. You start becoming suspicious of people who are actually kind. You start expecting disappointment even when things are going well. You start protecting yourself so aggressively that you stop letting love in at all. But someone else's bitterness does not have to define your perspective. You can choose to remain hopeful even when others are cynical. You can choose to remain hopeful even when others are cynical. You can choose to believe in goodness even when others expect betrayal. That choice keeps your heart alive in a world where many people have allowed theirs to grow cold. And let's be real, hope is powerful. Hope is what keeps people praying when the situation looks impossible. Hope is what keeps people trying again after failure. Hope is what keeps people loving even after being hurt. Without hope, the soul slowly shuts down. So when someone tries to hand you their bitterness, you have the right to gently refuse it. Another thing you should never accept is rushing the process of your growth. This culture loves instant results. Everybody wants transformation fast. People want success overnight. Healing immediately answers right away. But real growth usually happens slowly. Just like a tree takes time to grow deep roots before it becomes strong enough to stand through storms, your character develops gradually through experiences. There will be seasons where it feels like nothing is happening. You might feel stuck. You might feel like progress is invisible. You might even question whether your efforts are making any difference. But behind the scenes, something is still forming. Your patience is growing. Your understanding is deepening. Your faith is strengthening in quiet ways you might not fully notice yet. And when the right moment comes, the growth that seemed invisible will suddenly become visible. Another thing you should never accept is believing that your kindness has no impact. Sometimes doing the right thing feels unnoticed. You might treat people with respect and receive indifference in return. You might go out of your way to help someone who barely acknowledges it. In moments like that, it's easy to feel like kindness doesn't matter anymore. But the truth is, kindness often works quietly. You may never see how your words lifted someone during a difficult day. You may never realize how your patience helped someone feel valued. You may never hear the full story of how your encouragement kept someone from giving up. But those moments exist. God sees them even when others don't. And every act of kindness adds light into a world that desperately needs it. Another thing you should never accept is allowing temporary feelings to control permanent decisions. Emotions are real and powerful. Everyone experiences frustration, sadness, anger, and exhaustion at times. But feelings are not always reliable guides for long-term decisions. There will be moments when you feel like quitting something important simply because you're tired. There will be days when discouragement whispers that nothing is worth the effort anymore. But feelings come and go. A bad day does not mean your whole journey is pointless. A moment of weakness does not mean your calling has disappeared. Learning to pause before making major decisions during emotional storms can protect your future in ways you might not realize at the time. Sometimes the best thing you can do is breathe, pray, and give yourself time to think clearly before reacting. Another thing you should never accept is the idea that you have to prove your value to people. People are committed to misunderstanding you. There will always be individuals who judge you based on assumptions instead of truth. They'll form opinions without knowing your story. They'll criticize decisions they don't understand. They'll create narratives about your life that have nothing to do with reality. Trying to convince everyone of your sincerity can become exhausting. At some point, you have to accept that not every misunderstanding will be corrected. Not every rumor will be clarified. Not every rumor will be clarified. Not every critic will change their mind, and that's okay. Their responsibility is to live with integrity, not to control how every person interprets your life. When you release the pressure of constantly defending yourself, your spirit becomes lighter. Another thing you should never accept is allowing envy to poison your heart. In a world where people constantly compare achievements, appearances, and lifestyles, envy can sneak into your thoughts without you realizing it. You see someone else succeed and suddenly feel like you're falling behind. You see someone's happiness and begin questioning why your life looks different. But envy steals joy faster than almost anything else. It makes you focus on what you don't have instead of appreciating what you do have. It turns other people's blessings into sources of frustration instead of inspiration. Faith invites a different mindset. It reminds you that everyone has a unique path. Someone else's timing does not cancel your own. Someone else's success does not reduce the possibilities available for you. When you celebrate others genuinely, your heart stays free from the heaviness of comparison. Another thing you should never accept is believing that small steps don't matter. People often wait for huge breakthroughs before they believe progress is happening. But most transformation happens through consistent small choice. Choosing patience today, choosing honesty tomorrow, choosing forgiveness today, choosing forgiveness the next day. Those decisions may feel small individually, but over time they shape your character in powerful ways. Just like drops of water can eventually carve through stone, consistent good choices slowly build a strong life. And as you keep moving forward with this mindset, guarding your heart, protecting your peace, refusing the lies people try to place over your life, you begin noticing that your inner world becomes steadier, your faith becomes less dependent on circumstances, your confidence becomes less dependent on approval. You walk through life with a quiet awareness that certain things no longer have permission to live inside you. Fear may knock on your door, but you don't let it stay. Negativity may appear in conversations, but you don't let it take root. Doubt may whisper occasionally, but it no longer controls the direction of your life. And that kind of spiritual maturity changes everything about how you experience the world around you. Because once you learn what you will never accept again, your heart becomes a place where truth, peace, and faith begin to grow stronger every single day, even in the middle of challenges that once would have completely shaken you. And the more you grow in that understanding, the more you begin to realize that life is not only about what happens to you, but about what you allow to stay inside you after it happens. Two people can go through the same situation, face the same difficulty, hear the same harsh words, yet come out completely different on the other side. One carries bitterness, insecurity, and doubt for years. One carries bitterness, insecurity, and doubt for years. The other carries wisdom, resilience, and deeper faith. The difference often comes down to what each person decided to accept in their heart. You cannot always control what people say or do. That's just the reality of living in this world. People will misunderstand you. People will sometimes speak carelessly. People will project their frustrations onto you even when you did nothing to deserve it. But you still have control over what you allow to shape your identity. And that right there is powerful. Because when you realize that your identity is not owned by the opinions of others, you begin to live differently. You begin to breathe easier. You stop feeling like every negative comment has the authority to rewrite your story. Another thing you should never accept is the lie that you are alone in your struggles. Another thing you should never accept is the lie that you are alone in your struggles. One of the most effective ways discouragement works is by making people believe that nobody else understands what they're going through. It whispers things like, nobody would get this, or you're the only one dealing with this kind of situation. No. But the truth is, many people are walking through battles quietly. The person who looks strong on the outside may be praying through sleepless nights. The person who smiles in public may be fighting heavy thoughts in private. The person who seems confident might still be asking God for guidance in ways you never see. Human beings share more common struggles than we often realize. That's why compassion matters so much. When you understand that everyone is carrying something, it softens your heart toward others. Instead of judging quickly, you become more patient. Instead of assuming the worst, you begin extending grace. And grace creates an atmosphere where healing can happen. Another thing you should never accept is letting temporary setbacks convince you that your effort was meaningless. Sometimes you work hard towards something and still experience disappointment. You invest time, energy, and hope into a goal only to watch it fall apart. In those moments, it can feel like everything you did was wasted. But effort guided by faith is never wasted. Every attempt teaches you something. Every challenge strengthens your perseverance. Every setback carries lessons that shape your character in ways success alone never could. The world often measures value only by visible outcomes, but God also values the process. He sees the discipline you developed. He sees the patience you practiced. He sees the courage it took for you to even try. Those qualities stay with you long after a particular situation ends. Another thing you should never accept is letting your mistakes silence your voice. Some people stop sharing their ideas, their faith, or their encouragement because they feel unqualified. They think their past discredits them from speaking truth or offering guidance to others. But the reality is that many of the most powerful voices come from people who have experienced failure and learned from it. Your mistakes do not cancel your ability to grow. In fact, the lessons you gain from those mistakes may allow you to speak with greater honesty and understanding. When you share wisdom that was learned through real experiences, it carries a depth that theoretical advice often lacks. People relate to authenticity. They connect with honesty. And sometimes the very story you feel embarrassed about may eventually inspire someone else to change direction in their own life. Another thing you should never accept is allowing impatience to steal your joy in the present moment. There is always something ahead that we are waiting for. A goal, an opportunity, a breakthrough, an answer to prayer. But if all your happiness is tied to future events, you risk missing the beauty that exists in today. Life is happening right now. The conversations you have today matter. The people around you today matter. The people around you today matter. The small moments of laughter, kindness, and connection happening today matter more than we often realize. Waiting for everything to be perfect before allowing yourself to feel grateful can make life feel like a constant chase. But gratitude changes your perspective. When you begin appreciating what is already present in your life, your heart becomes lighter. Your heart becomes lighter. Your faith grows stronger because you start recognizing how many quiet blessings have been surrounding you all along. Another thing you should never accept is letting discouraging voices speak louder than the quiet guidance within your spirit. Sometimes God's direction doesn't come through loud announcements. Sometimes it arrives as a gentle conviction in your heart. A sense that you should take a certain step. A feeling that you should avoid a particular situation. A quiet reminder that you should keep going even when progress feels slow. Those inner nudges can be easy to ignore, nor when louder voices around you are saying the opposite. But learning to listen to that inner guidance is an important part of spiritual growth. It requires stillness. It requires reflection. It requires moments where you pause long enough to hear what your spirit is trying to tell you. And when you honor that guidance, you often find yourself avoiding unnecessary trouble and stepping into opportunities that align with your purpose. Another thing you should never accept is believing that kindness will always be returned immediately. Sometimes you will do good for people who never say thank you. Sometimes you will do good for people who never say thank you. Sometimes you will show loyalty to individuals who eventually walk away. That reality can hurt. It can make you question whether kindness is worth the effort. But kindness should not depend on guaranteed rewards. When kindness flows from faith, it becomes part of your character rather than a transaction. You treat people with respect not because you expect something in return, but because that's the kind of person you have decided to be. And over time, that consistent kindness builds a reputation that speaks louder than words. Another thing you should never accept is the idea that growth means becoming cold or distant. And some people believe that protecting themselves means shutting their heart completely. They stop trusting anyone They stop opening up emotionally. They become guarded to the point where meaningful relationships feel impossible. But wisdom does not require a hardened heart. It simply requires discernment. You can still love people while setting healthy boundaries. You can still care deeply about others while being careful about who you allow into your inner circle. A soft heart guided by wisdom is far more powerful than a hardened heart guided by fear. Another thing you should never accept is believing that your influence is insignificant. Every person has influence in some way. Your words affect people. Your actions affect people. Even your attitude can change the atmosphere in a room. You may never stand on a stage or speak to a large crowd, but influence is not limited to public platforms. Influence happens in everyday interactions. Influence happens in everyday interactions. It happens when you encourage a friend who feels discouraged. It happens when you show patience with someone who is struggling. It happens when your faith remains steady during difficult moments and others notice that strength. Your life becomes an example whether you intend it or not. And when you live with integrity, your influence becomes something positive that spreads quietly through the people around you. Another thing you should never accept is losing hope when answers take time. Waiting can be one of the most difficult parts of faith. You pray, you believe, you keep trusting, yet the situation does not change as quickly as you hoped. Waiting can make you feel restless. It can make you wonder if your prayers are being heard. But waiting seasons often shape your character in ways immediate answers cannot. They teach patience. They teach perseverance. They teach trust beyond what you can see with your eyes. Beyond what you can see with your eyes. Sometimes the waiting period is where your faith becomes deeper and more personal. Another thing you should never accept is allowing negativity to dominate your conversations. Allowing negativity to dominate your conversations. Words carry power. The things we speak regularly influence our mindset and the atmosphere around us. If every conversation revolves around complaints, criticism, and pessimism, it becomes difficult to maintain hope. But when you intentionally speak encouragement, gratitude, and truth, it changes the tone of your environment. People feel uplifted around positive voices. They feel inspired by individuals who remind them that goodness still exists even during difficult seasons. Your way. Odds can become a source of light in places where darkness once dominated the conversation. And as you continue living with these convictions, rejecting the harmful things people try to place in your life, and embracing the principles that strengthen your spirit, something remarkable begins to happen within you. Your perspective grows clear. Your faith grows steadier. Your peace becomes less dependent on circumstances and more rooted in your relationship with God. You begin to carry yourself with a calm confidence that doesn't come from pride, but from understanding the truth about your identity, your purpose, and your worth. And step by step, choice by choice, day after day, you continue building a life where the noise of negativity grows quieter, the strength of your faith grows deeper, and the direction of your faith grows deeper, and the direction of your journey becomes guided by the things you have firmly decided you will never accept again. As you walk through this life, remember that your spirit is far too valuable to carry everything people try to place on you. Not every word belongs in your heart. Not every word belongs in your heart. Not every opinion deserves space in your mind. Not every expectation placed on you is part of your purpose. Wisdom is learning to recognize the difference. It's learning that faith is not only about what you receive from God, but also about what you refuse to accept from the world. There will always be voices speaking around you, some full of encouragement, others full of doubt. Some will try to lift you higher, while others may unknowingly try to pull you back into fear, insecurity, and limitation. But the strength of your journey comes from knowing which voices to listen to and which ones to leave behind. When you guard your heart with faith, your life begins to reflect the quiet confidence that cannot be easily shaken. You begin to walk differently. You stop carrying burdens that were never yours. You stop believing lies about your worth. You stop allowing negativity, bitterness, and fear to shape the direction of your life. Instead, you hold tightly to truth, to hope, to purpose, and to the peace that grows when your trust is rooted in God And as you continue forward, remember this: your life was never meant to be defined by the doubts of others or the mistakes of your past. You were created with meaning, with value, and with a path that is still unfolding every single day. When you refuse the things that weaken your spirit and embrace the truth that strengthens it, you begin living with a freedom that many people search for but never fully understand. So guard your heart, protect your peace, stand firm in your faith, and never forget that the direction of your life will always be shaped by the things you choose to accept and the things you boldly decide you will never accept again. And the things you boldly decide you will never accept again.